Hi, it's Candie Langdale, and we're back for episode number 5 of Cartoon Insiders with Doug and Candie.
Here we are, and we're under air conditioning for the first time.
We got our air conditioner fixed, which,
So,
well, it didn't get fixed, we got it replaced.
yeah, so it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I feel very decadent.
Yes.
I feel like a luxurious penguin.
It's like living in the future.
Yeah,
After all that time with no upstairs AC.
because it done borked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I've got all my stuff. My ice cold water. I got my lip balm. The glue stick is put away. We are good to go.
We are ready.
Alrighty. Well, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we wanted to talk about adapting properties into usually cartoons. Intellectual properties, IP, as they say. There are different categories of this. So you might be adapting something from what?
A book or a series of books.
Yeah, or a series of comic books.
A video game.
Yeah, be based on a game or a toy, a ride.
Yes.
There are all kinds of things that are IP that you can base a movie or a series on. And they're different, and the approaches to those are different. Because if you're adapting a book, there's probably a story already.
Or several stories.
Mm-hmm. If you're adapting a toy, maybe not. So, like, obviously Barbie,
right,
the movie, was an adaptation, but they had to come up with a
whole
story.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Barbie as a doll, like, she has different sets and friends and occupations and stuff, but she doesn't really come with a story that you follow.
No, I feel like they've done bits of story in the past around here and around her, and there have been, she's had different friends and there's been variations, but there's not one ongoing Barbie story that they're telling.
Yeah. The Barbie movie, which I loved, but it had sort of a mockumentary feel to me. It was sort of in between types of... It was its own thing.
It was definitely its own thing. Mm-hmm. It had its own style. It was doing its own thing.
Yes.
Love it or hate it. Whatever. We drove to it on our pink Jeep, so we were pretty sure we were going to like it.
Yeah, we were...
Yeah.
We were... It was like shooting fish in I almost said ducks in a barrel, and I'm like, that's not right. It was like shooting fish in a barrel to get me to go see the Barbie movie, because I love Barbie.
Yeah.
I always loved Barbie.
I don't have a personal history with Barbie, but I definitely wanted to see the movie. Mm-hmm. Always liked Greta Gerwig.
Yeah.
It was a kind of a no-brainer.
We enjoyed Frances Ha.
We did.
Which was good.
And her husband, who co-wrote it, did The Squid and the Whale, which was great, and other stuff.
I had forgotten that.
Yeah. Big fans.
Alrighty then.
So there are also different approaches to adapting something.
Yes.
And, we've done kind of a lot of this. Mm-hmm. And so you need to come in and find out, what kind of adaptation are we doing this time? Right.
And it's better when the author is involved.
Yeah.
Because I would not want to... a creative output is so sacred to me that I would not ever want to hurt somebody's creative output.
I have never had the creator come to me and say, I really didn't like that, or I was unhappy with how that turned out, but that would be my fear. But you're a
pretty big guy. They might be afraid.
They might just not tell me. But we've worked with people who want different levels of involvement. Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes you're just telling the story that's already been told, but as a movie or as a series, which is different than in, say, a book, the storytelling process is just quite different.
Yeah, well, movies and a TV series, they each have their own rules about how they work. And that's not always compatible with the book.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of... In a book, there's a lot of, narration. You can read the main character's inner thoughts. There's someone telling you what's happening. And in a movie, you have to figure out the best way to convey that when you can't
Yeah.
see inside their brain.
Yeah.
So, how do you best convey that visually?
Right.
And then the other part of that, which is a little trickier, is not necessarily adapting it literally, but adapting it in spirit.
Yes.
Like, are you. Sometimes you have to change the facts of the book a little bit in order to keep the spirit of the book
Yes.
alive on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you want to get that tone right.
Yeah, the
Like,
tone.
that's the main thing. And I think, can we talk some specifics now?
Yeah, well, I have two books that immediately popped into my head. 3, 4, wait, 5. The first being K-Pax. I read the book and then saw the movie. And the thing is, if you try to literally, and I know it's not animation, if you try to literally adapt the book, the movie would be 14 hours long,
Yeah.
which you can't do that. So you gotta cut down to the bare bone. But the other ones I was thinking about was Aquamarine. Very successfully, I thought, adapted the book to the movie, but Aquamarine was a short story. It was
Yeah.
a novella, whatever. It wasn't a full-on novel. And so there was not so much detail in B story and C story and all that. It was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So the movie stuck to it. And then the other one, which was also a novella, was Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very successful adaptation. But I have to talk about my first time
Oh,
having read a book
yes.
and then going to see the movie. I was 8 years old, and I went to see The Black Stallion.
Yes.
And I was kind of crushed that they changed some details. For instance, in the book, it was Alex's dad. And I don't think I need to say spoiler alert because this was 1979.
Uh-huh.
But Alex's dad, the main character's dad, died in the movie. And in the book, it was his uncle.
Okay.
But I'm sure they were thinking, ooh, this will be much more hard-hitting if he loses his father. But it did change the course of the rest of the book.
And at the time, what was your reaction?
I was incensed that they would change it. But now, from my grown-up perspective, most people who saw the movie didn't read the book 800 times. And they were just trying to okay, what can we do to make this more dramatic, hard-hitting? And it also makes the relationship with the trainer, who was played by Mickey Rooney, it made their relationship more important because the trainer became his father figure. And I mean, there were a bunch of Black Stallion books that the dad was in. And I guess they weren't planning on making a million of them because it was 1979 and not present day.
They didn't understand franchises at the time?
No.
Well, they had Planet of the Apes.
Well,
that was about it.
So as long as they had that. So, I mean, I understand why they did it, but it really angered me as a child. I
remember you said that for a moment, you were like, did they misunderstand the book?
Did
Are
they not
they confused?
Read the book right? I was reading at a 10th grade level. What level were they reading at?
Well, maybe not 10th grade. No. That movie is a masterpiece of visual storytelling.
Yeah.
And to make the story work so much of the movie is just visuals.
Yes. Especially when they're on the island. There's no dialogue and it's just...
There's there's just like 40 minutes of the movie with no
It
dialogue,
was
something.
pretty quiet.
Yeah. So, obviously that's going to be different than a book. Can I briefly tell my Coraline story?
Yes.
I think this is all right.
Are you close enough to the microphone?
Yeah, I'll get a little closer.
Okay.
So, when Henry Selick was in the early stages of making the Coraline movie, I got hired to do punch-up on it, to write some jokes for it. So I read the book, and I read Henry's script, and I love Neil Gaiman, but I have to say, I think I liked Henry's script better than the book. It was really good. So I had a phone call with Henry, and I was like, Henry, your movie doesn't need punch-up. And he was like, I know. And I was like, I'm afraid to touch this script. It's so good. And he was like, I'm just going to take it all out. And I was like, oh, all right.
I like that he's honest.
Yeah, he was like, he said, if I don't think it works, then I'm just going to take it out. So you can't hurt anything. And I was like, okay. But, someone felt that it needed to be funnier, so they hired me to do Punch Up. As a result of this, I have, I believe, one short sentence in Coraline.
That must have been a good sentence.
It was all right.
Oh, do you remember what it was?
I don't. I remember, if I saw the movie, I would be, I haven't seen it for a while. If I saw it again, I would be like, oh, that's what it was. But it was like a minor riff on something that was already being said. It was nothing.
Yeah.
But I was, I love that movie. I was proud to have anything in there.
Yeah. I read the book too, and didn't they create YB for the show, the movie? He wasn't in the book, was he? I don't remember.
I do not remember. It's a good example, actually. It is tonally very close to the book, I would say, but there are significant changes.
I think that the tone is the most, to me,
Yes.
that's the most important part to get across.
Yeah.
Above the facts.
I mean, I'm sure there was some 9-year-old watching the movie going, what?
Yeah.
But
what if our whole podcast was just us going, oh, I don't remember what it was, or just us like trying to remember the right word, or and it was just a series of not remembering, and then like, okay, we'll see you next week.
Just pauses and I would like to talk about A Tale Dark and Grim.
Oh, yes.
Because I think that's a good example of some of the things that we're talking about.
Yes.
And that is, so it's a series that we did for Netflix that was based on
8 episodes?
I think it was 10.
10? Okay.
Based on the first book in a series by Adam Gedwitz.
And see, that's the thing. It was one little book, and we turned it into 10 episodes.
10 episodes. So that was like, I mean, the common wisdom is if you want to do a faithful adaptation of something as a movie, you want a short story.
Yes.
Like you can't fit a whole book into a movie.
You cannot.
If you're doing a series or a limited series, you come closer to fitting a whole book in. And there was still stuff in 10 episodes that didn't make it in there from the book. I mean, there were certainly details. But then there was also stuff that we added for various reasons. And that was an example of an adaptation where the author of the original material was very involved.
Yes.
Which was great.
Do you remember specifically some of the things that were added?
Well, there are two things that I think were key. I'm going to say three things. The first thing was that book is very much written for a parent to read to their kid, or anyone to read to a kid. So it's structured around there being a narrator, and that narrator being the person who's reading the book to you. And that wasn't going to work in the TV show. It's not someone reading it. We weren't going to do the Princess Bride thing.
We don't have Columbo to sit there and,
So, and this, I can't take credit for this idea because this was there before I came on. I'm not sure whose idea it was. It might have been Simon Otto. I'm not sure. But they added the ravens. So the ravens were telling the story. They're not in the book. They became the narrator who's telling the story to you, the listener.
Yes. And Simon Otto was he the supervising producer / executive producer?
Yes. Yeah, he was the producer, and he is an artist animation guy, so like I was coming in from the writing side and he was coming in from the art side. And he is Swiss.
Yes.
And a giant of a man.
I was just going to say, is Doug going to discuss how tall he is?
That's all I care about.
I think you're fascinated when someone's taller than you.
Who's taller than me here? They're in charge. The tallest gets to press the red button. But I'm not sure whose idea it was. It might have been David Henry's idea, but it was there before I came on. It might have been Adam's idea, but it was something that it was a change that needed to be made from the book because of the difference between a book and a TV show.
Yeah, so we needed narrators.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another significant change, and this one I can take credit for, I have mentioned before in the podcast, the first meeting I came in for, I said, I think this should be restructured. I think you need to start in, I think it was chapter 2. My feeling is that the kids need to get their heads cut off in the first 2 minutes. You
really have to get right down to business, especially nowadays
with streaming.
On streamers, there you have. I mean, you can spend all night just shuffling through there trying to find something to watch,
and you have zero commitment.
Yeah, so you have to grab people right away.
If someone's in a movie theater and they're not loving the first 30 seconds of something, they're staying.
Yeah, because
for a while.
Like, I paid $900 to be here. I'm gonna.
If you're flipping through stuff on popcorn. If it's a streamer and it's you're 30 seconds in, you're like, meh, you might just turn it off, go to something else.
And by the way, Netflix does have every bit of information in excruciating detail, and they will sit the show creators down and be like, okay, people shut it off here, they shut it off here, this is how many people watch the whole thing. Like, they know.
They know, and they're smart about it. They're not sitting there going, 10% of the audience turned it off when someone said ostrich, so we're never saying ostrich. Right. Like, they know how to interpret the data.
I mean, we hope, right?
Yeah. But so that was one thing. I felt like we needed to get right into it, and because the book starts with the backstory. Basically, it starts before the kids are born. It starts with the parents meeting. It starts in the past. Yeah. So I was like, I think we need to get right into the story, and then like, I think it was like 6 episodes in. Seven episodes.
Episode 7.
Yeah, we tell that backstory. Yeah. And it was substantially the same backstory that was in the book. It just came much later, and it allowed you to get into the story quickly and to get to know the main characters quickly.
Yeah.
And the third big change was the main characters in the book are very intentionally a little bit general, so that the reader, or in this case, usually the listener who's having the story read to them, can kind of imagine themselves as those kids. Yeah. So they don't get super specific, and in a movie or TV show you need to get super specific,
right?
So we had to come up with some more details of Hansel and Gretel's personalities and their relationships in order to make it work when you're watching
in order to drive this story. Okay, Hansel will act this way, Gretel will act this way in these situations.
And that, honestly, I mean, that was a lot of the fun, because and then Adam, the author, was in the room with us as we were sorting this stuff out, so there was never any question of, does Adam like this? I mean, you turn your head, find out. Yeah. And he was very on board with these changes, and he was contributing to them significantly. And I do remember that we got to a point where we had kept adding some like little bits of information at the beginning, and very near the end of the production, I was like, I have to say, at the beginning, I was like, I think they need to get their heads chopped off in the first 2 minutes, and it's like 5 minutes now, and honestly, I think it's too long. And they were like, this was great. They were like, change it to what you think it should be. Like, give us your version of it, and we'll see if that works. And I took out a lot of the stuff at the beginning and trimmed that down and got to that head chopping off early on, and they loved it, and that was what we got. I don't know if it's literally in the first 2 minutes, but it's very soon.
This was one of my favorite things about the movie. The series. Whose idea was this for? And I don't think this is a spoiler, because it's been out for a few years. If you haven't seen it by now, go watch it. But the first thing that the king says.
What is the
in the
first thing?
whole series.
What is the? Oh,
he
yeah.
walks into the room and he goes, and he's holding a toy dragon, and he goes, "I'm the dragon." Whose idea was that? That was so good.
If you haven't seen it, stop listening 10 seconds ago. But yeah, I'm honestly not sure whose idea that was. Was it yours?
It wasn't mine.
You would remember if it was yours.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
was pretty excited when I saw that, and I was like, "Oh."
I honestly don't know. Yeah, could have been David, could have been me, could have been Adam.
Simon.
I mean, let's say Adam.
Okay.
Why not? Could have
All
been
right.
Simon. Yeah.
We don't know who it was.
We don't know who it was.
Was
Could have been.
definitely not me.
Yeah, okay. It could have been me, but I don't remember, so I'm going to say it wasn't me.
I bet Charlotte would know.
Oh,
we
yeah.
should get Charlotte on here.
Yes,
She'll
we
set
have
us
to
all
have
straight.
Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte was the voice of the Queen. I think we've mentioned that before.
And she was the voice of reason. She was the voice of sanity.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so that was an example of very, very directly involved author, very hands-on part of the process. Fortunately, COVID didn't happen until we were done with those meetings, so he was able to be there for all of them.
Yes.
And then when we did Samurai Rabbit, different.
Well, yeah, we were told going in. Well, because the source material was not for children.
Yeah. So we were doing
Yeah.
almost a spin-off.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we were just told going in that it was not. We discussed Samurai Rabbit quite a bit last time, so
We did. But that was different in that we were adapting an IP, but we were adapting it by basically taking off from it as a starting point. And Stan Sakai, who created Usagi Yojimbo, was involved. Well, this was during COVID at this point, so not physically present, but he gave notes on everything. Mm-hmm. So we definitely wanted him to be happy with it as a spin-off from his work.
Do you remember when we wanted to call it Samurai Rabbit the Usaga?
We had a lot of title pitches on that because at the beginning we called it Usagi Neo.
Yeah, we were just calling it Usagi, and we were quite a ways into the process before we were like, we need to figure out.
Yeah, someone was like, maybe the title should not be two words that mean nothing to our English-speaking audience.
And the other thing is, like, it's a global audience.
Yeah.
And so they needed to have words that could be easily translated. Yeah. It tells you exactly what the show is if someone's not familiar with Usagi Yojimbo. There's just a lot of things you have to think about.
We were trying to figure, like, get as much of an idea for what the series is as you can from the title.
Yeah.
Like, there was a period where we were desperately trying to figure out how to get across the idea that it's set in the future in a 2-word title.
Yeah.
And we never did.
And Samurai Rabbit the Usaga wasn't doing it. I think I had also pitched Bunny Bouncer.
Yes. Because one of the translations of Yojimbo is bouncer.
Yeah.
So, and Usagi means rabbit. So, Bunny Bouncer, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't really think they were going to go.
No, of course they weren't going to go for it, but we had to pitch the most ridiculous names, right?
Yeah.
And, and I forgot to mention Melanie as the voice of Lady Fuwa.
Yes.
Was one of my favorite characters in the show. And she did a bunch of voices, and Somali Montano as Auntie, and
and she was
Karasu Tengu.
Karasu Tengu, yeah. Oh, yeah, she was so good. She was on Cleopatra in Space also, so.
That's right.
Yeah. And Eric Bauza. Did we mention Eric Bauza?
I believe we mentioned
He was everyone else.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And Stephanie Shea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We had a lot of great people on that.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty great. But anyway, this is about adaptations.
Yes.
I just was like, we need to get those in.
But we did, and the bringing in Yuki, who did the voice of Usagi Yojimbo in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, meant that we were also sort of adapting a different IP, and that we were slightly cross-pollinating with Ninja Turtles.
In case people don't know, Usagi Yojimbo was a sometimes character in Teenage Mutant Ninja
Yeah,
Turtles.
they did some crossovers. They were independent comic book series, but they were sort of like-minded, and they did some crossover stuff, and then he was in the original cartoon a little bit.
Yes.
What are other adaptations we've worked on?
Is Scooby-Doo an adaptation? It's so many things.
Well, if we're talking about adapting intellectual properties, we were doing yet another sequel to an existing intellectual property. And one of the I sort of feel like if you're doing Scooby-Doo, you're not adapting Scooby-Doo, you're adapting yourself to Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's still adaptation happening. But
Yeah.
And we did a number of those. And we had who was allergic to horses?
I don't even remember.
But 9-year-old you would have been outraged
That's true.
that we made. Yeah. I don't want to dwell on that.
No.
But that was adapting an IP. Cleopatra in Space.
Which I had no involvement in whatsoever.
You were not involved in. That was one. So Mike Mayhack, who did the series of graphic novels, he was kind of like, I understand this is going to be, you're using the starting point idea that we had and kind of taking off in a different direction. Because one of the things was DreamWorks wanted the show to kind of follow the main characters as they're in this, like, training in this academy. And if I remember correctly, that kind of like, the first book covers like maybe a couple of years of that. And we wanted that to be like the whole, at least
Kids in School.
like the whole series. So we couldn't really directly adapt it. So we wound up kind of taking off another direction. And Mike saw everything and approved everything, but he was not as directly involved.
So you didn't change the story so much as you focused on a small part of it that was not covered in the graphic novels, kind of.
Yeah, we used the starting point, and we used, because she is, with these characters in the books, but kind of went off in another direction, and did our own. It was a riff on the idea, and hopefully the fans of because one of the things is, if you're a fan of the original IP, you've seen that or read that or heard that or whatever already. So, in theory, you ought to be good with seeing a variation on it, because then it's a little bit new.
Right. That's the thing. It's like, why rehash the existing stories? I mean,
Yeah.
that's fun sometimes, but you don't always want to just... The books or the graphic novels or whatever, they can exist as their own thing. And then you don't necessarily have to retell those stories. Sometimes it's fun to see them in another form, but you don't necessarily have to.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that, Hollywood kind of loves to do either gritty reboots of things that were lighter or comic remakes of things that were serious.
Yeah.
It's like, it's fun to see a whole new version of something that was familiar. So something like 21 Jump Street, it's kind of fun. It was a serious show, and now it's a comedy. I
didn't see the movie. Was it more funny?
It was a comedy, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Did I see the movie? If I did, I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't think I watched it.
I don't know. That might have been... I know I saw the first one.
I watched the original series when
yes,
it came out.
Yes, you did. I didn't watch the original series.
I did, and I have to say, I bet on the wrong horse, because I was a huge Booker fan. Richard Grieco got his own spin-off series called Booker. And then, the last time I saw him, I think it was Night at the Roxbury.
Wow.
But apparently Johnny Depp had a bit of a career after 21 Jump Street.
He did a couple of things. I would have to look him up to say what. But.
He really annoyed me at the time, because I was like assistant coaching girls volleyball at the time. And it was like, put down the damn Johnny Depp magazine and do your drills. It was like they just wanted to talk about Johnny Depp.
Wow.
And it was like, no, we're here to play volleyball.
Puss in Boots was another one. I talked about that before, but that was like, because they wanted to do a series based on the movie, but they needed the series to take place in between the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, and like sort of the middle part where he had, a few years where he was having adventures, but we didn't know what. So it kind of had to take place in the middle of the movie, and it was like, how do you do that? And so that was when I pitched Brigadoon, basically. And I think by the end of the series, because there was an episode somewhere, like, I think later in the series where we met a bunch of Puss in Bootses from different dimensions. So there were all these... We were doing that alternate timelines thing before the Marvel movies.
You had asked Antonio Banderas to be the voice of one of them, and he said no.
That was going to be the joke, was that one of the Puss in Boots was going to have Antonio Banderas' voice, and our Puss in Boots was going to be like, you'll sound a little different to me. No, you sound different.
Puss in Boots in this series was, of course, Eric Bauza.
Yes, who was fantastic. But yeah, Antonio wasn't available, so we didn't get to do that. But there was some point, like toward the end, where I was like, I think our Puss in Boots is one of the alternate universe Puss in Boots. He's not from the same universe. So he isn't necessarily going to continue on from the end of the Puss in Boots series and have those adventures with Kitty Softpaws that he has in those movies. That was my thinking, but, because some people... Because he goes off with Dulcinea at the end of the series. Spoiler.
But, we don't... She could have gotten sick of him and left.
A lot of people were like, oh, I want them to stay together, but I know he's going to meet Kitty Softpaws. And I was like, this could be alternate timeline.
Maybe she dies tragically.
No. Happy ending. They ride off into the sunset.
Okay.
I don't know if I've ever mentioned this publicly, but there actually was an additional beat at the end of the last episode of Puss in Boots where... what's his name? The sort of comedy relief oafish character, also voiced by Eric Bauza. Eames, yeah.
Why do I remember that? Because you named him after a chair.
No.
No?
No, he was originally going to be a pirate captain's sidekick. His name was just Smee backwards.
Oh.
So Smee is Captain Hook's sidekick. He was Eames.
I always thought you named him after the chair.
It's spelled like the like Charles and Ray Eames, who made the famous Eames chair, and also did animation.
Okay, so. I just thought that was such a random name.
No, it was Smee backwards. Okay. Yeah, but
it's weird that we're just now having this conversation.
He was kind of the sad sack who. It seemed like no one ever liked him, and he was always wanting to be friends with Puss in Boots.
And he was the butt of the joke a lot.
And at the very end of the series, there was a thing where he popped out of the sort of dimensional portal and went running after Puss and Dulcinea going, wait for me!
Oh, that's so sad.
And I was like, we got to end on Puss and Dulcinea. But
and I had thought that you named Dulcinea after me. And then it turned out that you were like, what? Because I was like, oh, you named her because dulce is
sweet.
Spanish for sweet or candy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you named her after. And then you were like, what?
Well, retroactively, she is named after you now.
Okay, yeah.
But Puss's horse was named after Alcide's horse, and I should stop this now.
Why?
I don't know.
Because it's fun.
All of the naming.
Babieca?
Where the names came from. Babieca. Yes, was Alcide's horse. Are there other adaptation things that we want to talk about?
Alcide is where they have the Silver Lake Shorts Film Festival in Hollywood.
Yes, there's the Alcide restaurant, which has...
which is really cool.
Yeah, they have flamenco dancing there.
We went to go downstairs.
We went to see the Silver Lake Shorts. That was fun.
Yes.
We had the wrap party for El Tigre there, I believe.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What else is there? Was Ozzy and Drix an adaptation?
Yeah, Ozzy and Drix was a series adapted from a movie, and they had already figured out how they were going to do that by the time I came on, because they wanted to have the main character, in the movie is a white blood cell who lives inside Bill Murray, who doesn't take care of himself, so he's overworked, the white blood cell, and they wanted to have the same character but inside a kid for kid appeal.
I think before you said he got sneezed into someone else.
I believe.
And that is just such a gross sentence.
That's what happened. Yeah, he was a white blood cell from a character who did not for legal reasons, resemble Bill Murray.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think he got sneezed out and ended up in the kid main character.
That's a gross visual.
It was gross. But the whole thing was kind of gross because it was all internal body stuff and icky. So I wasn't involved with that, but people like Alan Burnett and I think some other people had to figure out how that adaptation was going to happen. And that was kind of a tricky one.
And you were the story editor?
I was the story editor. They had one script already, I think, when I came on. So they had already kind of set up the story. But the reason that we do a lot of adapting of properties, I feel like there's a lot of, like, you hear people complain that there aren't enough original stories coming out of Hollywood.
Yes, you do hear that. Why do they keep remaking stuff? Why has Hollywood... Well, they say Hollywood has run out of ideas.
Yeah.
And that is not the truth.
No. The people who make movies and TV shows have tons of original ideas that they would like to do. But...
I have 30 just on my own here. Yeah.
You could have another 30 by the end of the day.
Yeah. We have... I wouldn't say piles of scripts because they're on the computer hard drive, but we have script after script, ideas, springboards, outlines, artwork. I mean, we could spend the rest of our lives making all of our ideas and never run out. And I just want to say, every artist and writer we know also has a lifetime supply of ideas.
Yes. So it's
not the lack of ideas.
Yeah, the creators have the ideas. The creators want to make the original ideas. And this is not, by the way, a criticism of like studios or executives or anything, because the fact of the matter is, if you make a bunch of movies that don't make money, then you don't have any money to make more movies.
It is a business.
It is a business. That's how it works. They have to make things that are going to make money. And every studio and every executive at every studio will sometimes go, nah, the heck with it. I love this idea. We're going to make it. It probably won't make money. They love movies. They want to make good movies. But they have to make money to keep making these movies. So if you are trying to make a movie or a TV show that cuts through the tremendous amount of noise from all of the streamers and all of the everything that's out there now, the safest bet is something that's an intellectual property that people already know about and hopefully love.
That has a built-in audience. Because like when I was in junior high, there were only a handful of channels. There was Thursday night, the only thing that was on was The Cosby Show and Family Ties.
Yeah.
Everyone I knew watched that on Thursday night because there was nothing else on. And then on Friday at school, we were discussing Family Ties and The Cosby Show.
I would literally go for walks in my neighborhood in West LA on Thursday nights and hear the same shows coming out of every single apartment or house
we didn't have a lot of choices. Yeah. Now there are millions of shows. Like just in our house, we have all these different streamers. And I mean, it gets to be overwhelming. There's so many things to choose from. And like we said before, you got to grab people quickly.
Yeah.
So if you see a little thumbnail on the screen, and it's like, oh, I read those books. Yeah. Oh, I know what that is. Yeah. You'll pick that.
You'll at least look at it.
Yeah.
Like if it's some random thing you've never heard of, it's hard to get people's attention. Yeah. And have a chance. And that happens to me too. I hear they're remaking something that I loved and I'll get interested. I will click on that link to see what that's about. And I might not if I just hear a random title that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
So the reality is it's a safer bet to make something that is an adaptation of an existing property, a remake, a sequel, a reboot.
They're not going to have to spend millions on marketing.
Yeah. It's already got an audience.
Yeah. And so, if you would like to see more original content, seek out original content when you're looking for something to watch.
If the audiences start flocking to original movies and original TV
They will
series,
make more.
they'll make more of those.
If you don't want to keep seeing sequels, retellings, quit watching them, because they will quit making this stuff that's not lucrative.
I would like to point out that of the top 20 box office money-making movies of last year, 2 were original.
Yeah.
Both animated. Because, like, if Disney, and one of them was Disney, it was Elemental. If Disney makes an animated feature, like, that's their hook.
Disney has a built-in audience.
They have a built-in audience. They don't have to grab your attention with a remake. They used to have to. They used to make retellings of fairy tales and adaptations of books, 101 Dalmatians. That was most of what they did. But now, they're their own brand. It's like Disney is the IP.
Yeah.
So they can do that. And then the other in the top 20 was Migration, which is Illumination Films. And I think since the Despicable Me movies and stuff, they kind of have their built-in audience too.
Yeah, and Despicable Me was that wasn't based on anything.
No, that was original.
So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They built a franchise pretty quickly.
Yeah.
They have a ride at Universal Studios.
Yep. People
and
love
Minions are everywhere. And it was
So
a
many
good
memes.
show.
Yeah.
It was fun. The Minions idea is pretty genius. As we were saying before, it's very expensive to create new characters.
Yeah.
So if you can basically design one character and then have a million of them.
Yeah.
That's
and little variations.
Yeah. And that's why, like in Samurai Rabbit, there were different clans. You know, you had the Bat Squadron. You had I can't talk today. You had the moles.
Yeah.
The Mogira. You know, the ninja, and they all dressed, and they wore a lot of them wore masks.
Yeah.
And we have to do that.
Right at the beginning, it was like, we have to populate a whole city, so we're going to do some generic bystanders. But then the way we're going to fill this out is we're going to have groups of people, or groups of, in this case, anthropomorphic animals, who dress alike, so that you can have a bunch of these bats and a bunch of these moles.
I had come up with a bunch.
Oh, there were more,
There were like flying squirrels. There were deer businessmen. There were macaques.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of them.
There were several more of these groups. Weren't the deer businessmen were always riding bicycles? Wasn't that the thing?
Yeah.
Because we were like, technically, if we could make these guys who are on bicycles, put them in the background, and they could literally be props, because all they're going to have is that one repetitive bicycling action, and we could fill out the characters without having to design a character, because even a moving prop is a lot cheaper to make than a character.
But unfortunately, we didn't have the budget.
Yeah, no,
and of course, the doctors, doctor dogs.
The doctors were identical but different colors.
Yes. The Shiba doctors.
Yeah.
Which was, I don't think we ever named them, did we?
They did not have individual names. But I think one of the things I want to say about this is we love doing adaptations.
Yeah, no, there's stuff like I would like to, we need to do an episode about the things that we want to see.
The things that we would like to adapt?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Well, we will do like a Dream Projects episode for sure.
Also, I think it's fun working with the author, and it's exciting watching it come to life, and it's a little less work for me to do.
Well, I mean, one of the good things about it is, like, on every project there's a lot of people you have to please. And, I mean, to be blunt, at some point you have to figure out who's the most important person to please, because they're never all going to agree. And when you're adapting a creator's work, like, that work is their baby.
Right.
You can't hurt the baby. So they're always going to be number one. So you know who you're working for.
Yes.
They're not signing your paychecks, but they're the ones with the baby.
Right.
The baby is the most important thing. Baby wins.
But yeah, I enjoy doing adaptations.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
It's something we've done a lot of. We're good at it. We love doing it. We do have original ideas we would love to do, but
I enjoy the puzzle of, okay, I understand this. How do we turn this into something visual? How do we put this on the screen and have it make sense and have it be appealing to the people who are not familiar with the
Yeah.
source material.
And there's, I mean, it is kind of a puzzle. Like it's almost
is.
Tetris at some point because it's
a-
also a puzzle you're doing quickly.
Yes, yeah, it's
And
true.
it's just like you got to try to like get
It's a
everything set
labyrinth.
so when the next thing falls in, you've got a place for
right,
it.
or you have a place for it to land.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
I think that's about it.
Should we wrap this up
Yeah,
here?
we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
But we definitely will do one about our dream projects.
Why don't we do one next?
Yeah, maybe that will be
Ooh,
next.
Okay.
But if anyone has anything they'd like us to talk about, let us know.
Yes. Oh, and I just
Instagram.
want to say, we are on how many different platforms now?
I think 17.
So we are on Spotify, we're on Audible, we're on Apple
Apple Podcasts.
Podcasts, we're on Amazon, we're on YouTube.
Yeah.
We are we're spreading this around.
The YouTube one is nice because Candie adds some little additional facts on the screen.
I was just having fun, and I do have to say that I get very perfectionistic, and if I let myself stop, it'll never get done because I'll start adjusting everything. So the graphics, the viewer gets to experience me working out how the graphics should best
You get
work.
to be part of the process.
You get to be part of the process. So you get to see the crappy ones, and you get to see them get a little better. There was one where I forgot to put Doug and Candie up at the top. There was one where the blue was wrong, the font was wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm working it out as I go along, and I do notice the mistakes, but I do know if I go back and fix them, that it will start this process that will never end.
We have said this before on this podcast. We must not let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah, well, I have to not trigger the OCD.
Yes.
So we're just going to let that go, and it's okay.
Yep.
All right.
Can you give our Instagram before we go?
Oh, yes. It is Doug and Candie Langdale.
DOUG
Underscore.
And underscore CANDIE underscore
Langdale.
LANGDALE.
Okay.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Alrighty. Talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.